Of course, it's Commander Cobra.
Good evening, Mac.
Okay. You are in your undisclosed location?
Undisclosed location tonight. That is correct. And
Okay.
what an interesting ride it's been with this breaking piece of the program. It's been all over the place.
Right. I'll bet. You know, the thing is, we should say, though, up front that we're going to be one less tonight. He is out on his own secret mission, raising funds to start the program again, to start this UFO investigation program again. He said, I'll be standing on a street corner in Boston trying to raise funds for this.
Dressed as Brady, I understand. Isn't that what he was doing?
Well, you know, he usually does dress as Brady, so, you know, why change now? Anyway, won't be joining us, but Switchblade Steve will be calling in later on, and also Emily M., and we're just going to talk about what this means, you know. And when I first saw it, I'm sure you felt the same way, Cobra. It was like, I said, well, finally, because for years, the U.S. military, the Pentagon, has just been denying that they, pay any interest at all in UFOs. Their Project Blue Book ended in 1967. It was started in the early 50s. That they were supposedly looking into UFOs, but it turned out to be more of a smokescreen than anything else. Emily M. is going to be talking about that later on in the show. And then from that point on, up until just now, just in the past week or so, the U.S. military has just denied that they ever looked into UFOs after 1967, saying it wasn't a security threat. And now that all turns out to be a lie.
I know you're shocked
on
this development, and hopefully it hasn't rattled your sense of understanding of the workings of government, which I feel we need to bring in Bismarck, who said that the more he understood what went into sausage and goes into government, how he liked both less. So just gonna leave it right there. Class up the show with a Bismarckian quote.
All right. Well, yeah. Okay. You know what it means, though, that whenever we say this magic word, I'm going through my briefcase here. We have to. Cobra, you caught me with unarmed here.
Well,
do you have yours?
I don't know if I do or I don't. I'm sure there's. I always have one handy.
I said a prayer to Saint Francis. Is he the saint you pray to when you lose things? Saint Anthony. Saint
Anthony. Yeah.
Okay, here we go. You mentioned sausage, so anyway. So you thought we were going to be serious tonight, right?
We are serious. For you, this is Masterpiece Theater for you.
Okay, here we go. We can have Jeff put some music under that, the Masterpiece Theater music. Anyway, all right, so let's get serious. I mean, basically what has happened, and it's really out there, and it's got a lot of press this week. It was revealed by the New York Times, 3 reporters in the New York Times, that there was this secret program that was going on for, it sounds like about a dozen years, in which the Air Force created a department, a unit or whatever, to look into UFO reports. Once again, telling us that they weren't doing this, but in fact now they've revealed they did. The funding for this thing was secret. It was a black op, but it came at the urging of Harry Reid, who was a senator, Democratic senator, a long time in Nevada. And I'll tell you, a lot of this stuff goes on out in Nevada, a lot of testing of new weapons and so on. So he's you have to assume that he knows, maybe a little bit more about things like this than, let's say, some senator from Delaware. Anyway, he arranged $22 million for this program to, be birthed. And then when the story came out in the New York Times, it turns out that they had footage. One of the things they did release was footage shot by 2 F-18s in the early 2000s out over the Pacific of this, what looks like a spinning top, a kid's top, flying at really great speed, and they're tracking it. And you see one of them on the HU heads-up display. We'll have Cobra explain that in a minute. But you see one of them in this kind of video, but you can hear the pilot saying there's a whole fleet of these things. And there's also a USO connection to this, because they actually spotted this thing from the sounds of it, sounds like they spotted it coming out of the water. So basically, where we have, it's been revealed that the Pentagon indeed did have a program looking at UFOs up until recently, and that, they have footage. The Navy has this footage, which they released. And the reason that the program ended, or one of the reasons, was that the guy who was in charge of it resigned because he said, number one, most of the stuff that they had remains classified. And number two, he said there was opposition in the Pentagon about funding this thing, which is $22 million. Now, Cobra, I just got off the phone with X before we went on the air here, and I brought up that idea that, $22 million, people complaining about $22 million being spent on this. And he said the Air Force spends $22 million a year on their golf courses. Okay? So I think that statement is disingenuous, what this guy was saying, because if you have had a program where it's resulted in a lot of stuff that you feel has to be classified and stay classified, what are you complaining about $22 million for?
Well, it's not inconsequential money, but in the scheme of the scale of things that are spent, it is a drop in the bucket. So X is correct. I think the big issue that's going to come up about the money is, why did $22 million, a fairly low amount, get pumped into a Pentagon project that had a head of that particular program division? It's not a lot of money. It went to a person that's going to do study of it. One of the reasons that some flags have gone up for a number of folks is that black program money doesn't require any oversight, and you basically are writing a check out of the magic checkbook for that. That's how many foreign aircraft have been bought when a deal has had to be made, to get people to or from a location.
Right.
They go and they get that money, they move. It doesn't need oversight because ultimately there's a budget that's attached to, and you have discretionary spending at that, and you don't have to tell anybody, and you don't want the enemy, quote unquote, to know that money is being spent.
Right.
So for a small amount of money for the overall budget, but going to an individual to study and then not having any kind of, and this is one of the things that's always critiqued on black program spending, what's the results? What were they looking for? When's the report going to come out? What's going to be the end result of this? So that's part of it. And the fact that was even brought up is probably attached to the names of the people that are involved, because like all politicians right now, there's a lot of dubious activity that has gone on. Is that a nice way for me to put it in the season that we're in? Not to get too catty on this. So it sounds like this was a very I can tell you right now that $22 million, if it was dropped on some of the projects I had worked on at small companies, would have been like the second coming.
Yes.
Because it would have carried almost a year and a half's worth of test flying for some of the vehicles that we were involved in.
Okay.
So $22 million, it goes to an individual that you don't know, and it hasn't been made clear what's going on, with a provocative senator's name that's involved with this, with no previous documented statements about the UFO phenomena. Nothing in particular that's gone on with the Pentagon in the past, that he had a very good relationship. There's certain ones that have had it. There's certain ones that have been identified with it. It throws a lot. I personally think that this piece is a little bit of disinformation. It's a little bit of throwing in some extra static to cover up whatever is truthful or whatever in the footage. Also, I'd like to add that some of the footage has been corrected. Some of the stuff that was said verbally.
Okay, go ahead.
One of them, the corrections that came up in the New York Times, because I've reviewed the tape a number of times, and I've got friends that tell me, look, you're just looking at another F-18. I got other ones saying that, no, that doesn't match, and there's all kinds of descriptions going on. No question in my mind that the film has been dumbed down, that they have played with that HUD description. That's the heads-up display, and that heads-up display is like a plate that shows up on the cockpit instrument panel area. It's used to help target and tell you what your status is. It gives you indications. It also tells you what's going on with the aircraft. It can also be on the newer aircraft. It's on your helmet, so while you're moving your head, you can see some of it. It can be in both locations. If it's a two-seat aircraft, the operator in the back usually has a larger screen for targeting. and it's all recorded digitally, and then it's moved around just like any other digital image.
Right.
In the old days, it was put on tape.
Right. It's they don't keep. What do they do? Oh, they just.
It's a digitally image now. Most of them are on a digital recording. It goes onto like a card or a series of cards.
Okay. Because I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
I was just going to say. One said, "This is expletive drone, bro. Not. It's a expletive going on. What it is expletive going on, bro." Also, a pilot said the wind is 120 knots to the west, not the wind is 120 miles to the west.
Okay. It's very interesting. I want to, well, first of all, HUD, the way that I've always thought of HUDs is, if you can imagine you're driving down, you're in your car and there's another screen on your windshield and it's telling you, how fast you're going, how much gas you have and stuff like that.
Yeah, actually, they made some cars that had that system.
Okay. It makes the fighter pilot, so he isn't constantly looking down at his controls. He can just look straight ahead. He'll know, like you say, the status of the airplane. So when you see it, and what happened is when this story came out, then these two videos featuring these two Navy pilots, they also came out, and they look like looks like really bad video. But what I thought I would do is let me really quickly just read the first 2 or 3 sentences of this story, so people out there who might have missed it will know what we're talking about. This came out last week from the New York Times. It says, in the $600 billion annual Defense Department budgets, $220 million was spent on advanced aerospace threat identification program and is almost impossible to find, which is now how the Pentagon wanted it. For years, the program investigated reports of unidentified flying objects, according to the Defense Department official, interviews of program participants, and records obtained by the New York Times. It was run by a military intelligence official, Lorenzo Anzaldo, on the 5th floor of the Pentagon Sea Ring, Cobra, deep within the building's maze. The Defense Department has never before acknowledged the existence of the program, which it says it shut down in 2012. So basically, that's the story, the lead of the New York Times story.
Right.
You have these videos from these F-18 pilots who, one of the things I was talking to X about is that somehow or other, he and his buddies there where he works checked out these guys and he said these guys are rock solid, especially the guy who's been on TV. He retired sometime shortly after this encounter, but he comes across as a guy who, he's a fighter pilot. He's kind of a soft-spoken fighter pilot, but you can tell that, he has the right stuff, let's say. And, he's talking about it he says, I wish I could fly something like this. People who were saying, well, this is a drone, whatever, have to remember that, and Cobra, you're someone, who falls into this category. People who fly for the military see things in the sky all the time. They see so many things they basically know that's the moon, that's Venus, that's this, that's that. And I think that any fighter pilot, any military pilot with some time under his belt, if he comes out and says, I don't know what this thing is, I tend to believe him.
Sure. I mean, there's definitely the possibility is wide open to all that. But I think, to be fair, the possibility that it could be a terrestrial vehicle that we just had it not, but 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, the unidentified vehicle that they launched F-15s out of Oregon to go chase down, and it flew and they couldn't find it. And then it was like Keystone Cops, the way it was reported. No one knows for sure what's happened. They got the wrong vector. They couldn't find it. They went the wrong direction, but they did launch airplanes for it. I think in that one, almost everybody's convinced that it's either a UCAV, an unmanned combat aerial vehicle that probably went off its test part, got lost, was on its recovery flight path, and then they were able to get control of it and bring it back, or it knew what to do at a certain point. In this particular case, this fits that template, but there's some other things that are going on with it, the way it's maneuvering, the way it's flipping itself around, how it's reported. So what you were saying about the HUD allows the fighter crew, the fighter pilot, or if it's a two-man aircraft, it allows them to continue to look outside while still having a resource to control and see what their different parts and pieces are doing on the aircraft, like the radar and the infrared tracking systems and things of that nature, with how the weapon system is lined up. And it records all those things going on. So they're looking at both those parts. That's why the picture looks poor. I've seen plenty of HUD films where you got back, the way the sun reflected off of it and how it worked.
Right.
So when you put the verbiage, and this is why the audio part can be so important, because it can be more important than the pictures, because you're, like you said, you have a qualified person that's describing what's going on. That seems to be jumbled. That seems to have some weird aspects to it. One person told me, well, they sound way too much like they watched too many episodes of Top Gun, the way they're talking. I know lots of folks that talk that way. I know other folks that talk very, very strict. They follow them a much more coded.
Right, yeah. Like one of them says, look at that, dude.
Yeah.
And you say, wow, okay, fighter pilots call each other dude. But
yes,
that's Top Gun-ish. You're right.
It sure is.
Now, let me ask you this, though. So from that angle, let's say that is the case, okay, that this is something that, was Earth-made, that is something, that we've made. But is it the case of, let's say, with these F-15 pilots, did someone call them and say, hey, listen, this highly classified program involving an air vehicle is coming your way. You have to go find it. Or are they not in the loop?
It appears to me, Mac, the way this was set up, they were doing their workups with the Nimitz carrier group, and all my deep respect, I was on the Nimitz during the first Gulf War. Great ship, and it continues to have a storied history and career. So they were out working. One of their ships further out in that carrier task force had control of the tactical air control of the airspace at some point and saw this, kept losing it, had it. If you go, and this is the other part, the stories have changed or have been edited a couple times. The first one I read on Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, had more raw information, and then it kept changing, working itself back. It's been edited and cleaned up a little bit in its writing, and it may be a little bit more sensational or a little more X-File-ish in its handling on that.
Right.
But this ship called their attention to it. They vectored over to it. Whoever was controlling them while they were doing whatever maneuvers they were doing, it's a combination of probably practicing some kind of air-to-surface, air-to-air combat, and then they're going to go back and do their landing on the ship. They were getting ready for a deployment. They went over. They were asked if they had any live weapons on their aircraft, and they come back and tell them, no, we only have our training weapons, which are basically one of our stories that you had early in the year, a training warhead. Remember the one that showed up in Cuba?
Oh, yeah, right, exactly. By mistake.
By mistake. It just got mailed there from a show. I don't know how that happened. That's why you use FedEx. It's guaranteed to be there overnight. But exactly. Get them as a sponsor, I guess. But they worked up to this, and this is where they got the footage of it. And everyone's talking in that part, as it was reported, as we don't know what's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
Then you add in the other layers of it. Its activity close to the surface of the water, what they think they see it doing, the way it's behaving in the flight, the way it seems to accelerate and move. That, to me, is very, very important information because, as you have said, these guys are very qualified experts in pulling G's and getting themselves into position so that they can do the business of what their aircraft is designed to do.
Right.
And as we've said in the past, fighter pilots are not easily impressed. Just ask.
Right. Yeah, sure. I mean, and these F-18s are like the hottest airplane that the Navy has. It's one of these planes that can do just about anything, and is just really, kind of an awesome fighter plane. And so if you wind up flying one of these things, you got to be really the tip of the top. And that is another interesting aspect was the USO aspect of it. But I have to ask you, you said that you saw this video for the first time Saturday night?
Yes.
Okay. Weren't you here drinking with me and Agent X and our wives here Saturday night? Yeah,
I was. Remember in the Saturday afternoon when I sent you that, I was talking to you and I leaned over you at the table and I said to you, did you read that thing about the UFO? And you said, no. I said, I'll have to send it to you when I got home.
Oh, okay.
But I've been looking at it and I sent it out to a couple. So yes, I can multitask. I can.
I thought you said pass the spaghetti, please.
And then I can also get it to your place to enjoy a wonderful Festivus that we had at your place.
Okay. Well, for that, I will give you this. Thank you for the gift, by the way.
Oh, you're welcome.
So anyway, and I agree with you 100% with these pilots. What they say, like if you were going to put a story out, you would just put out, the fighter pilot, and here's the HUD video.
It was reported,
Here it is, and we're chasing and stuff. But what these guys said was that they see it, and then they see a disturbance down in the ocean. So they like immediately dive, the 5 miles down, and they can see this object. And it to them, it looks like it's just come out of the ocean because below it is, like waves and churned up water and turbulence, and then it's gone. Now, I got to tell you, since I started reading UFO books, like when I was a kid, flying saucer books, if you really read good ones, about 2/3 about UFOs, but then there'll always be a chapter in there about USOs, unidentified submerged objects. And there are many people out there who think that these things, they're not necessarily from space, but somehow they come out of the ocean because the ocean takes up 75% of the planet. There's been like hundreds of reports of.
And Mac, we know that the United States Navy is working devices like that right now. We know that they have undersea devices that they're launching and recovering on subs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been highly suspected that they are doing like the famous voyage to the bottom of the sea, that they have a vehicle that can go into the air and then come back to the sub.
Yeah, cool. So what we're saying is that these scrambling pilots off of Oregon and Washington just a little while ago, and then
they chased an unknown aircraft that went up over California, then in towards Idaho.
Okay, is that once again, I'll ask the question: Is it that they don't know what they're chasing, or is that the cover story?
Well, it could be both. I think here's the interesting thing that I want to close this section because we're starting to approach the commercial break.
All right.
Where are the other pilots
mm-hmm.
in this discussion? Now, the guys that have come up, by all accounts, I don't know either of them. I was hoping that I would recognize or knew one of the two of them. Where are the other folks around them? I'd even be interested to hear the guys that were on the Nimitz that were in their squadron, because in one of the pieces that I read, and I mean, I've read a lot of these in the last 48 hours.
Okay.
It talks about them getting some ribbing and stuff like that, that they got ribbed about what they saw and what they chased.
Right.
It just, I don't remember hearing much about this. And this is usually something that doesn't just die if there's more to it, which makes me think that there may have been more construction around how this story is packaged and how it's coming out. Now, I'll leave you with this as we approach, so you can close out this segment. If $22 million was spent and it got us to the point where this was leaked or engineered out, and the New York Times was able to find it, I think it was money well spent.
Right. The going back to the story of the two Navy pilots. If you were going to tell the story, as I said, it'd be just like chasing or whatever. But to include this whole idea that, hey, maybe this thing came out of the water, that's something that rings true to me. That isn't like someone making it up. And the fact that these guys also said, look at how fast they're going, how they're maneuvering. There's no wind and stuff like that. I just think their comments are legitimate. The question is why now? We should talk about it at the other side of the commercial. Yeah, but why now? And
I'm going to leave you. I got to throw one more piece at you.
Go ahead.
We talk a lot of movies. You have a advanced degree in the study of film.
That's true.
We made a remark about Top Gun. There's also a part here that it kept me unsettled. I haven't really said much about it, but in the movie Independence Day.
Yes.
The Marine fighter pilot who flew F-18s and could magically fly helicopters in that movie, small technical issue that went on there.
Okay.
He flies the alien spaceship that was hidden in Area 51.
Oh, right. I remember that part. Yes.
And while he's flying up there and the thing's whipping around, he yells out, in kind of a rebel kind of yell.
Yes.
Oh, I've got to get one of these.
Okay.
And I got to tell you, it just makes me pause. Because sometimes movies imitate life imitates movies. Sometimes you see movies and you incorporate what you see. But it's interesting that some of the canned phrases have been added into this. An Intel buddy of mine sent me the article, completely separate channels, because the pilot at the end of it said, I want to fly one of these.
Yeah, I'd love – yes, he does. Right.
I'd love to fly one of these. And thought that made it genuine. This is an intel guy who was deep into doing it when the Russians were Soviets and the whole 9 yards. He's convinced that this is genuine.
Legitimate, because it's a thing a pilot would say. You know what I mean? I mean, a scientist would say, "Hey, look at this thing," and a sociologist say, "Oh, the world is going to change," but a pilot would say, "Man, I'd love to fly that thing."
Yep.
All right.
But I do have a pause there. It seems a little canned when I take a shaded, more mature view of it.
Okay, so in the 30 seconds we have left, your intel friend thinks that legitimized it, right?
Right, and he thinks this is a legitimate story. He does believe that there's some layers of stuff going on.
Oh, okay, yes.
And there's absolutely no way that this thing is over. The program and this person are probably done. It's shifted over to something else.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
You're done on Friday, and it's a new office on Monday.
Why don't we take? That sounds like a country song, doesn't it?
No, I think the one you're talking about is Everything Comes Back to You when you play the music backwards. I think that's what you're talking about.
Oh, right, okay. And not Thank God in Greyhound You're Gone. If the phone doesn't ring, it's not me. Anyway, why don't we take a commercial break now? You're listening to Mac Maloney's Military X-Files show here on the Distant Thunder Radio Network. We're talking about this breaking news about how the U.S. government has finally admitted that they've been looking into UFOs for quite a while they were telling us that they weren't. Well, we take a commercial break now, and we'll be right back after this. Back, everyone, to Mac Maloney's Military X-Files show here on the Distant Thunder Radio Network. This is Mac Maloney. We have a very interesting show for you tonight, but sad to say, Juan is not here. He's out on a secret mission. Sorry, girls. But joining us is the equally famous Commander Cobra.
I'm very pleased and honored to be with you, Mac, tonight.
Okay. You stumbled over those words there. Did I throw you with that?
Yeah, you did, because I wasn't ready for such nice, lauding introduction. Okay. Obviously, this is a very serious show that we're knocking out tonight. Yeah. And I was reading some more. I just got another piece that I was looking at here, so I caught something that caught my attention, so it caught me off guard.
Why don't we tell people what the heck we're talking about? What we're talking about is this report that has been out now for about a week, having to do with a $22 million program called the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. I love that name. Basically, what it was is a Pentagon program to look into UFOs. I mean, this is something that they've been telling us they haven't been doing since 1967. And surprise, surprise, our government has been lying to us about something that, a lot of people care about. And I think a lot more people care about it than the U.S. government or the military thinks. So we're talking about that tonight. One of the things that I wanted to just throw at you, Cobra, is we talked in the previous segment about how, and now over the during the break, I thought more about that. And, you're right. The audio going with this video from the F-18 fighter showing this thing that looks like a top. It looks like a kid's top, but it is kind of gyrating in a way and not flying in any way that it seems that would be possible aerodynamically wise. But, it's almost like, one of the pilots says, "Hey, look at that dude." And, and I'd love to fly one of these things. And as you said, people in the military, like about half of them are really squared away and they do everything by the book. And the other half are kind of, a little bit more, funky, let's say. And they might talk like that. But this video is very kind of public.
It's canned in some areas. It's got a kind of a strange campy kind of feeling to it.
Yeah.
But when you read the other parts of the pilots that are involved, they seem completely genuine. I have no doubts about it, and they're easily identified that they were who they say they are, and they didn't seem to have any kind of negative impact to their careers or anything on this. It everything in the new world media that we live in.
Okay.
You can't trust anything. Everything is photoshopped. Everything has no one puts a picture anymore on the internet of themselves without doing some kind of touch-up or softening the focus.
Something.
I mean, look what we do for the program, how we all the stuff that we do to get the audio of the program to have the right quality so it doesn't have, and the editing that go into that. Well, no different. And I think the Pentagon is way too much into the whole Hollywood presentation thing. And of course, ultimately, Mac, the timing of this. What the hell is the timing of this?
You know what it goes back to? Remember about, it was probably not quite a year ago when, well, I shouldn't say who said this, a friend of ours who works in, you know what he does, you know, he works with the agencies, and he was brought to Washington, you know, for this kind of, you know, routine.
A working session.
A working session.
Interagency working session.
Yes, exactly. You know, and it sounds like a boondoggle, and most of them are. It's like people
this
from
month
the military.
We're discuss. This month we're going to discuss.
And people from the State Department, and people from the White House, and people from, you know, the scientific community, who knows where. And they all get it together in a classroom, let's say, or a hall, and they give them a problem, and they come back and they say, well, the military would handle like this, State Department handle like this, blah, blah, blah. And he's been going through these things for years. I know you've probably been involved in them. And he says it's always something like
mine are never as good as his. I got to tell you that right off the bat.
The Russian pipeline has sprung a leak. You know, it's you know, it's contaminating Siberia. What should we do? You know, the military would say nothing, or send spies in, and the State Department said, oh, we'll have to help them out. And it's just one of these things. Then they go have lunch, right? So he said the last time he went, the problem was a UFO has been recovered. How would you handle it? And he says he was shocked that, you know, as we've talked about many times, you know, the outsider's view looking into the military is that if you say anything about UFOs, you're ridiculed, you're laughed at, which is, you know, actually probably, you know, in the civilian world too. He was just very surprised that they would spend, and these things go on for 4 or 5 hours per problem, something on, you know, a UFO crash he had never experienced before. And he said, as he put it to me, he says, I'm just waiting for the next shoe to drop. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is how they ease us into this.
Oh, sure. I mean, this could be a socialization, normalization kind of thing going on. I mean, the other part that I linked it up to, and I thought about the project that he had sat in on and participated on. The one I thought about was just recently all the documents that came out about the Kennedy assassination, the opening of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the very public statement that the CIA was still withholding some of them. Right. And I said to myself, why would you do that? If you're releasing it, why would you add any more intrigue to it by saying that the CIA is holding back some of the documents?
Yeah, right. Very good, Cool.
I mean,
why add to the drama?
Well, exactly. I mean, if you thought you weren't going to get everybody's attention, you completely have. Even people that are completely not interested.
Yeah, right.
And of course, you know, they're saying, "Oh, those SOBs." That's the smoking gun, literally, figuratively, and in every dimension.
Yeah. Right. So
is this in the same vein? Is this another one of these just throwing it out there because we're getting ready for some major reveal, some major reset that's going on?
Are they that smart? You know what I mean? Are they that smart that they would actually say,
but I think they're in that much of fear that there's seismic shift going on. There is culturally and a lot of things going on that people that held power or at least think they had their reins on it are feeling things slipping. So if you stay ahead of it by causing more overload, and I think everyone is trying to harness this animal, which is the internet. I mean, look at the craziness that just went on with the net neutrality business.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm not.
I'm not going into the political realm of it. What I'm getting into is the talk of how people were going to be dying in multiple thousands of numbers of this thing changed. It's just crazy.
Is it a threat to my? Who are these thousands of people? People who can't get on the internet?
I don't know. I have no idea but this is the kind of statements that people make public. And I think those kind of things were made all the time. But when you had just printed press and then, major media television press, that most of that stuff didn't make it past the cutting room floor or wasn't put on a reporter's. Now you have somebody with a phone who can tape it. And while somebody is trying to file a story, they have it on a YouTube. And they're signing a deal in an Uber.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's like when they went in to get bin Laden as the helicopters were landing.
The people in the neighborhood were coming out with their phones, taking pictures of.
Think something's going on here. Looks like American helicopter.
Twitter.
Wow. It was out there like in about a minute. It's just amazing.
They don't look like Pakistani helicopters.
Yeah, something big is going on.
What the heck is that?
But see, that's the thing is, and also when news used to reach us through, the radio, TV, or newspapers, there was a limitation on space. You know what I mean? I mean, it would be edited, so people would. I've worked in newspapers, and people read the stories to make sure everything in it is factual, mostly because they don't want to be sued or whatever. But now you can, and you can only write, a story with 8 columns, let's say. But now it's an unlimited amount of space that you can put whatever information or disinformation in there, and many more people read it, and no one edits it. So no one knows what's the truth and what isn't.
Back now, what's the other part of that? And I think this feeds directly coming back to the issue that we have at hand here. With this new media, with this new way of doing business as it is, the more exposure you get, the more hits that you get. I think this is why the story has been broken up and repackaged into a number of different snippets, because each time you look at a different page, that's another hit, that's another advertising icon that's thrown on another page that hopefully has been programmed.
Right.
This is like right now on the screen that I'm using to talk to you, I've just had an ad flash up. Adulting is when. Showed up there. Yeah. So
excuse me?
Yeah, adulting is when. So
adulting.
Adulting.
What does that mean?
Well, I can tell you right now, it got enough of my attention to take a close look at it, and it's to sell laundry products. Okay.
Oh, it's not adult films.
No, it's got but the way it's written and the way it's set up, it's, I don't want to say the names of the manufacturers are involved on there, but it's grocery shopping. That's what it's about.
Okay. All right. Yes. Okay. Yes. Right.
So now take that back to, are you trying to widely disseminate? Are you trying to put into different parts and pieces? Are you using it as a way to find out who is interested? Are we part of some grand little experiment now to find out, as everyone likes to do their surveys, because politics wants, and I know you don't want to talk politics, I'm not talking about that part of it, but the political part of it is, go ahead and run the study and find out if 68% of the population in the United States is interested in UFOs and 53% of it has a very positive view of extraterrestrials, does that mean in the next election cycle you're going to hear people talking about, if I can open up the files, I'm going to open up the files?
Yes.
Because they think they can get votes. Is this part of what just came out?
See, here's the thing, too. We've talked about this a lot on the show, is that I think in the past 15 years, 6 or 7 of like the top movies of the year had something to do with ETs or, like you say, Independence Day or something, War of the Worlds. People love that kind of stuff. They really and truly do. And I think people, just generally like the whole idea of us going to the moon and stuff like that, because it's cool in a way, right?
Right.
And it wouldn't surprise me if the U.S. government, or particularly the military, was like just so far behind the curve that they're just now realizing that. And I can also see some contractor going to these people and say, hey, listen, this is what you do. Okay. You put out a little bit of news here, a little bit of news here, this video, and so on and so forth, and see what the reaction is. And I could see some PR firms selling that in and just seeing, is this a political point, as you said, to make, when next time the presidential election comes up. But on the same vein, what really was interesting, too, is, first of all, someone said, well, this is just some big ad for Star Wars, okay, because it's coming on the same week.
You can't help but ask that question.
All right.
You cannot help to ask that question.
And also, and as you know, I just dislike the media in this country so much that I haven't, watched any kind of news or anything for more than a year. And this proves why, in my opinion, is because when ABC Morning News came back from showing the
you made a perfect comment to me about it. You're absolutely correct.
And showing the video of the actual object, and then talking to the pilot, and he's making all these good points. The bubble-headed news chick behind the desk with George Stephanopoulos, who was also kind of a bubble-headed news chick, she says to him, "Oh, I think that was the Millennium Falcon." Now, come on, okay, you stupid person.
Oh, nice. Right.
This could be the biggest story in the history of mankind. If these things turned out to be, let's say people from another planet, people from another place, another dimension, another time, whatever, you will not. There's no story that will be bigger than that, history-wise, as us making contact with someone who is not human, and that's all you're going to say. Now, maybe someone, greased her or whatever, and to give the Star Wars a plug because it was on ABC. ABC is owned by Walt Disney. The new Star Wars is on Walt Disney Films, right?
Yeah, it's all part of that. So, huge conglomerate with Fox and the whole thing, right?
Right.
So, yeah. I mean, you touch upon a very scary aspect of all this as well. All your entertainment, the fusion of your entertainment, because that and the media and so-called news is all one. There's no line of separation anymore.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
She uses the term Millennium Falcon like as it's an understood icon. It was a monopoly piece in the Star Wars monopoly. So I guess, I think
a lot of people know what she was talking about. 40 years ago, they passed a law because Saturday mornings used to be nothing but cartoons, when we were growing up.
Right.
And there was a Flintstone cartoon, and Flintstone's vitamins put ads on that basically were just the cartoon, but the characters are taking Flintstone vitamins, right?
Right.
And it went to the Supreme Court, I think, and made them stop because they said you're blurring the line between what you're presenting and what you're selling, right? Well, now they break that law all the time. Not in cartoons, but in the way. So
what's changed? What's changed? I guess to the power of 10, the amount of money that people are making.
Well, first of all, there's no more cartoons on Saturday morning, which is kind of a bummer. But yeah, it's money. It's
why would there be cartoons on Saturday morning when at any moment you can call it up on your child's iPhone?
Right. Exactly. But the thing is that that family tree we just went through. Okay, ABC News is owned by Walt Disney. Okay, Walt Disney is giving you, and then Walt Disney has just bought Fox and. When you see any kind of news,
all that stuff is you're down to a very small group of people that make the media, make the movies, make the entertainment.
But now my question is that do you think, the Pentagon, is this something the military minds would go along with them? You'd have to really kind of suck these
First of all, realize that the person that was in charge of this project was not a military member. It was a civilian director that was in there. That wasn't a general or an admiral that was running this. It wasn't a colonel or a captain or a commander or anything like that.
Contractor?
But no. This was probably some kind of an appointee, undersecretary, director, something underneath that, and that's part of most of DOD under the Secretary of Defense Office are civilians. You don't have military people serving. Okay. You got people that from the military that are there, but it's civilian oversight, civilian control of our military. And it's one of the most important factors of our military. Mm-hmm. With that said, I never heard anybody feel that they couldn't talk about their experiences. I do remember a couple of guys seeing things and they talked about it, what they saw, and they didn't know what they saw. And the command, back in the 80s saying, hey, knock that off. You sound like a crazy guy when you're talking about it. There was at one point in the 60s that people that were involved with UFOs were actually looked upon as something to keep an eye on and maybe accelerate their promotions. And then it went the other direction, which happens a lot. But if you look at the social changes, I want to make sure I phrase this as carefully as I can. The things that are going on with the society and the military being a microcosm of that, and the stuff that's going on, I don't think that anybody would really hesitate right now to talk about this if they thought they could go it. And quite honestly, if anybody went after them, they have the out to make their own movie, their own film, contact their own person.
Books, yeah.
Books and the whole 9 yards. And how I was wrong because I saw E.T. or what did I see? The only thing that the line won't really allow people to get away with is when you give away that classified information, when you give away to the enemy verifiable part of it. And that's another part we haven't even touched upon yet. How long before the Russians, Putin can, he checks our pages all the time. How long before they come out and say something about this?
Right.
With their version of this, do you really believe that Russia and Putin are not going to have some response to this that they have a long study. I just read the obituary on my show on Sunday of Mariana Popovich, who was one of the greatest test pilots ever. Okay. She was the third woman to fly supersonic. And later in her career, she was involved with a UFO, and she was very big into UFO investigation.
Right.
Celebrated.
Very interesting. She's like a female Chuck Yeager to the Russians.
Right. Or their version of Jackie Cochran, the female test pilot that did tremendous things in the States and really was never properly recognized for her contributions. Okay.
So what I'm thinking, too, is having just going back in history with the Russians, I mean, in the 1970s and the 80s, the Russians, actually, a lot of other countries are much more open about this, and the United States is the only one that really is kind of closed off because in the I'm going to say late 70s, early 80s, the Russian military actually sent like a message to every person in the Russian military at the time. I think it was like 3 million people. I'm talking about ground soldiers, people, on ships and pilots and so on. And they basically said, fill this out if you see a UFO. Okay. Because they wanted to see, how many, basically how many people in the military are seeing these things. And they would also know, hey, is that top secret stuff, showing up. So like they got like tens of thousands of responses, and they really kind of looked into it. This was something that was not highly publicized here in the United States because at the time, it was the old communist bloc and so on. But they actually did look into this, and what they found was that these things show up, a lot. People see them a lot, and people don't naturally report them either. Okay, but they kind of prove the fact that these things have been with us. They've been with us for a long time. They're still with us now. And another thing, too, is what all this proves now, what we're talking about, I think, is that you hear many times on shows, not this show, but shows like this, where, the military, of course, knows, what this stuff is. Oh, the military, of course, has UFO pods and so on and so forth. This proves that's all wrong. Because if they knew what UFOs were, this would never have come out. That video would not have come out. Those F-18 pilots wouldn't be able to talk, and that story probably wouldn't have come out. So, as I've said all along, the U.S. military knows that UFOs exist, but they don't know what they are.
And they use this as a means to exploit the enemy and gather information and intelligence. Mm-hmm.
Quickly to explain how that's done.
Well, we know that when they were test timing and flying and doing their operations during the 60s and 70s, they fed into UFO supportive organizations false information to keep them active to cover up what it was. Mm-hmm. That was part of Project Blue Book or whatever tier you want to go do that.
Right.
They would feed information in. So when the Russians are making these kinds of remarks or this is going on in Europe, you use that as a cover, as another layer to throw off what's going on.
Mm-hmm. So do you expect then, are you saying like within the next 2 weeks, we're going to see footage from Russian fighters chasing UFOs, that type of thing?
I can't believe that Putin will not at least let the Russians grab some kind of piece of what this is going on, because this I think was put up as a test to some degree. Mm-hmm. And it is blossoming, with a factor maybe to the fourth or fifth power. It keeps spreading out, and then they keep adding different stories. So there's more stuff in the search engine.
Okay, but I have to ask this: is are you giving the U.S. military or the U.S. government too much credit? Because 99% of what they do gets screwed up. So why all of a sudden would they be able to just put out this master plan that is working perfectly from the sound?
Well, I don't say that it's working perfectly at all, Mac, but I do think that in 15 years, you're starting to see active campaigns that are fought on the battlefield of the internet and media and people's attention. And why this is going on and why this is being said, something else is going on. There's no doubt in my mind that this is part of it.
But what could be bigger than making, as I said before, making contact with someone, an intelligent species that is not us? I mean, what could be bigger than that? Why would they have that?
And if it's that big, and I believe you're correct, and I don't think that that's not a strong possibility. If you look at what's come out of the Holy See, the Pope himself, the kind of remarks that have been made as of late that there could be extraterrestrial life, which is a huge shift for
he said that recently.
Yeah, within this latest Pope, within the last year, and talking about the possibility of life. I'll look it up on our break to talk about it. These are all things in there. But in the middle of that are all the other people who are vying for control. They don't care if they're aliens or not. They'll make a deal with them when they show up. Right now, they're wrestling and they want to maintain control.
Wow. Okay, Cobra. All right. Well, hey, listen, like I say, that you're
adjust the tinfoil on my hat, Mac?
No, I didn't. I can't see you on camera tonight. But anyway, actually, I miss all the Tom Brady attire that Juan usually has on.
Yeah, and Bob's not around to flick the lights for you.
Bob's not around. Bob the ghost. Yeah, but anyway, well, I'll tell you what. Why don't we do this? One thing I want to talk about when we come back is something that you hit on in the first segment is where is everyone else? They let these two F-18 pilots come out. Where
and
are
what's
all
the story behind them coming out? I mean,
yes.
there's nothing there to help you understand that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's like, why, when, now?
Right.
Why? And also the fact too is I watched on, I read, let's say New York Post it's owned by Fox. It's very conservative. It's very far right, but I read it for the sports section which is a great sports section. But I happened to see the headline for it, and it's that ridicule factor again. What all their stories that have appeared about this, what we're talking about, this UFO secret project, they all hit it from, hey, look at how they've been wasting our money for $22 million. I mean, it's constant. They're in lockstep with that kind of stuff.
Right. Now,
and I find that interesting too. It's
right.
kind of counter what we're talking about. So people are going, oh, yeah, what are they spending that money for on that nonsense? But I think the majority of people are going, yes, we want to know.
When we get back on the break, I've got a part that I want to address on that because I think that there's an interesting explanation to that, or at least some enlightenment to it.
And we're hoping that when we come back that Switchblade Steve will be joining us, and later on Emily M. We're going to be talking about this guy Bigelow, who actually got the $22 million to run this program. And also, this is not the first U.S. government, U.S. military program to look into UFOs. There's been several others. Emily M. is going to be talking to us about that. So why don't we take a commercial break now? And we'll be right back after this. You're listening to Mac Maloney's Military X-Files show here, a special show talking about the newly revealed secret UFO project run by the Pentagon. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back, everyone, to Mac Maloney's Military X-Files show here on the Distant Thunder Radio Network. This is Mac Maloney. We're talking tonight about this newly revealed Pentagon program that was looking into UFOs and tracking alien life, something that the U.S. military, U.S. government has told us for years that they don't do, and it turns out they were lying to us that they were doing it, at least up until 2012 when they said the program ended. It's controversial whether the program ended or not. But an interesting topic, is this the big breakthrough we've all been waiting for, or is it just, some kind of weird media campaign? Who knows? But that's what we're talking about tonight. No Juan tonight, girls. Sorry, he's out on his own little secret mission. He says raising funds to revitalize this program. Who knows? But with us is the equally famous Commander Cobra.
Good evening, sir.
From his undisclosed location. And we're also joined by Switchblade Steve Ward up there in Battle Creek, home of the Flakes. How are you doing there tonight, Switchy?
Well, I'm doing really good because I am slouching closer and closer to retirement.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Usually don't reveal our ages.
Is that a forward face plant, or are you laying on your back?
or someone dragging you?
Well, I'm gonna try and retire before I have to lay on my back.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Good to know. All right. We all prefer it for the audience to think we're in our early 30s, Steve. But if you want to be the retiree,
listen, I could be an entrepreneur that has done so well in business that I'm getting out at 45.
Right.
And a winged monkey could fly by on the show at any time.
There he goes.
Funny, I just saw one go by the window.
Really? Yeah. Okay. Very interesting up there in the Boulder Flex. So what we've been talking about is this, this program that the military was running for a while, looking into UFOs, UFO sightings, and so on and so forth. And they supposedly closed it down. It was controversial that they did. But they did say in a statement, which I also thought was interesting, was that the Pentagon would continue to take reports from military people, principally U.S. Air Force pilots, on if they see things that might be described as UFOs, which was interesting because, we've been taught or we've been told, over the years is that, military pilots don't report seeing UFOs, and neither do airline pilots, because if they do, in the case of the airline pilots, it might, affect, their promotions or whatever. And military, same thing. You don't want to be known as the tin hat guy, because it stands in your way when you want to get promoted. But now the Pentagon, apparently is saying, no, we will talk to them. I think that probably what was happening, and you can, straighten me out on this if I'm wrong, Cobra, is I think that, they probably reported these things all along, but they just, hushed it up, classified it, and so on and so forth. What do you think? If a typical fighter pilot within the last 30 years saw something really strange, wouldn't he have to report it? They just wouldn't let that information out.
Oh, I think you're right. Partially, I think it could be not to allow something classified to be seen. Could be that you have a situation where they are wanting to control the information, and now this could be a major sea shift in the way the wind's blowing, that they're allowing this all out, or it's all part of some orchestrated other program. Get you ready for the big news.
Well, if this is their way of easing us into it, as you say, this story has had a lot of legs. It didn't go away. It's been all over CNN, both negative and well reported, and somewhere like way, way, way out there with the woman who said on ABC News. I just thought it was the Millennium Falcon, giving a Star Wars plug. To a movie that her parent company just put out, as if they need any more advertising. I just want to say that for the people who haven't seen the video, it's all over YouTube. But to me, this thing looks like it's not crystal clear. There's something out there. It looks like a kid's top. It looks like a black kid's top, even though they describe this thing as a 40-foot long Tic Tac. I don't see the Tic Tac angle. Looks like a kid's top, and it's kind of rotating back and forth, or going back and forth on its axis. And at one point, one of the pilots says, that's flying in no way that's, aerodynamically possible that we know of. It's in the air, but, flying, may not be the right description. It came out of the ocean, or it came very close to the ocean, which really leads us into this whole unidentified submerged object thing, which is something that, people have been seeing for years. It's just the video is very strange on the story that came out. Why now, and why in the New York Times now, and where do these pilots come from? And all of a sudden, they're being interviewed.
Where's the other pilots?
Where are the other pilots? Why haven't they come forward? This isn't the only video that we have of UFOs. I mean, we'll go back to Gordon Cooper back in the early 50s or the mid 50s. He was working out at air base, in that secret air base out in California, Edwards Air Force Base, where they test a lot of secret stuff. And he was assigned out there, and two guys that he was working with who were a film crew. They were filming airplanes landing on a new kind of arrestor system. Filmed the UFO landing right in front of them, people looking out at them and then taking off. They brought the film back to Gordon Cooper, who sent it right on to the Pentagon. On orders from the Pentagon, they said, use the general's airplane and get it to us. He never heard another word about it. 3 years later, he's part of the Mercury 7. He's part of the first group of U.S. astronauts, and those guys were heroes. So we know that there's at least film video of UFOs going back to the 50s, and I get a feeling there's miles of footage. So now, as you say, Cobra, now why? Why now? Why?
Well, we're definitely in a sea of change, and the other part I'm curious about is where's the other pilots for this story? What's coming next? Speaking about what's coming next, I believe that Miss Emily M may be beamed into our op here.
We can hope.
I
Emily?
am.
Wow.
Hi, Emily.
Hello.
Suddenly, the show has taken a welcome turn.
Yes. Classed it right up.
Right.
Oh, I see. It didn't take a welcome turn when I showed up.
No,
No,
it didn't. So I'm
not-
glad you're still as perceptive.
Not really,
as
Steve.
ever.
You-
Okay. Just clarification. That's all.
When you told that dragging yourself to a retirement story, I don't know. The energy just went right out of the room, but it's back. Emily, thanks for joining us. You know, we're talking about this secret Pentagon program looking into UFOs.
Mhm.
Steve, now this guy Bigelow, we've talked about him on the air before and how he was at least the former owner of this place called Skinwalker Ranch. Can you tell us a little bit about him? First of all, you know, who is he? How much money does he have? Does anyone know?
Well, you know, you comb the internet, and you don't know if you're getting facts or not. But I've heard estimates of $1 billion. But he was in real estate, developing hotels and so forth for decades. And my understanding is he always had an eye toward. He was fascinated with the unexplained, with UFOs, and he always wanted to head in that direction. And also, he's been involved with putting his own private vehicles up into orbit, space stations and so forth.
Okay.
So go ahead.
No, we should say that. So this guy Bigelow is the person who Harry Reid, the senator from Nevada, was able to funnel the $22 million to Bigelow. And he's the guy who kind of wrangled this whole, secret UFO program. But my question is number one, he was putting up hotels and casinos, and he's only worth $1 billion. That's chump change in that era. Why isn't he worth $100 billion? And number two, and I don't expect you to know that answer, but could he really put space stations up in orbit? I mean, without us knowing about it, or would the government let him put his own private space station?
Well, he's already put up a couple. Now he had to get the. At that time, again, my understanding was, and a lot of this is pretty hazy, NASA wasn't cooperating, so he went to the Russians and he put these modules up, and they were part of the reason was to try and monitor UFOs and so forth into space. Wow. And for a while, he even had some kind of it's not going on anymore. He had some kind of an agreement, working agreement with MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. Okay. So I don't know where that stands now, but he wants to put private hotels up into space. And now he's working with NASA. They seem to love him. Wow. And it's the same old story. Sometimes government does fine to a certain point, but you get the private sector in there and it can go crazy. But it's interesting. You mentioned that 22 million. George Knapp, George Knapp came in. He knows Bigelow personally. And
George Knapp is who? Who's
George Knapp is an investigative reporter out of Las Vegas. Okay. He does the Sunday show sometimes on Coast to Coast AM. Right. He co-wrote the book with Colin Kelleher, The Hunt for the Skinwalker. And that is about the ranch in Utah, of course, that Bigelow purchased that had all kinds of weird stuff going on. And purchased and set up the National Institute for Discovery Science, which I think disbanded about 2004. He bought the ranch back in '95.
Now, was the ranch already kind of haunted when he bought it?
It was going nuts. It was the people on the Shermans were going crazy. And one of the first paranormal investigator they enlisted aid of was Chris O'Brien, who has been on the show before. And he himself has investigated the San Luis Valley, which is the southern Colorado and northern New Mexico. Is that correct?
Very interesting place. They see UFOs out there like every day. They see them so routinely they don't even bother to report them anymore.
And I guess there still has been a lot of the biggest headache on the Skinwalker Ranch or the Bigelow Ranch is people trying to trespass and for a thrill or whatever.
What's some of the things they see out there? I mean, do they see more than UFOs?
Oh my God, they've had they've had animal mutilations. They've seen these giant black triangles, and some of them coming out of what seems like a hole in the sky. They've had all kinds of orbs, blue orbs, orange orbs, that seem actually the way they move around sometimes almost implies that they might be intelligent. They've seen creatures, just bizarre creatures that don't fit any rational. You won't find them in the National Geographic magazine. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
So it was like a laboratory. It would have been fascinating to be there. But the problem is that the scientists, when they got there, and some of them they weren't there all the time, 24/7. Sometimes they were. They documented, I don't remember the exact number, I think it was over 200 separate paranormal incidents, and none of them were repeated.
Oh,
so
wow.
how in the hell do you apply the scientific method to that?
Right.
But I want to mention.
What's that, in 1 year, while they were there? How long were they there? Was that like 1 year?
95 to 2004.
Right. Okay. And you say it still goes on these days, right?
That's what I understand. There are other people. There have been. This Ryan Skinner was a guy who's written some books. He actually trespassed a couple times. There's other. He had some bizarre experiences. Of course, he claims seeing one of these orbs turn into a wolf.
Oh, wow.
Okay. There's actually in the literature, there's a lot of strange. There are other instances where people see these orb things and they become something else for what it's worth.
Right.
There are people that have stood night vigils in the general city. It's not just the ranch that's crazy. If you go back, in fact, a few decades, there was a book written called The Utah UFO Display, written by Frank Salisbury. And Frank Salisbury got in touch with a local high school teacher named Junior Hicks, who had cataloged. It was like a grand central station of flying saucers and landings and so forth in that area, in that general area, prior to all the hullabaloo over the Skinwalker Ranch. Right. And that book's still available. And if you open the page to all the, it's like I say, Grand Central Station. It's not like one type of craft. There's dozens of different type of craft that have been seen there for decades. So it's been a hot spot forever.
The most fascinating thing about that is that they're never repeated. That for some reason that's very interesting. It implies that something is going on there, in which the other side is kind of yanking our chain a little bit.
Well, you mentioned that $22 million and that the funding dried up. Well, there's a couple things there. According to George Knapp, is that they were still doing the investigation. They had personnel that were already part of the government or the governmental department, and they would do their regular duties, but they would still go out and do UFO investigations. Knapp was actually George Knapp, that is the investigative reporter out of Las Vegas. He was actually privy to a lot of this earlier on, but he didn't have the green light to talk about it yet. But he said that they had. He said it was some of the reports that have come out have said that they stopped funding it because it wasn't doing any good. They weren't finding anything.
Right.
And did you talk earlier about the one of the reasons they were doing this is not to look for ET, but they were, at least some people were recognizing that whatever the hell this is some kind of very high technology that apparently we don't have. And so, they want it. They want to see if we can figure out what it is, who it is, and emulate it.
How can we get a hold of it, right? I mean, when we were talking earlier about how X went to this this forum where the problem given to him, the military, the State Department, so on and so forth, was what would happen if a UFO, landed, and the State Department had a long dissertation about how we'd have to be kumbaya with whoever it is. The scientific community wanted to know what it was made of, and the military just came up and said, does it have any weapons, and how can we get our hands on them? That's all they cared about, And the title of the program is a lot interesting to me. Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. Cobra, isn't it strange they put in the word threat?
No, because everything that is evaluated that way, you're from the standpoint of the military, from the Department of Defense, is from a security basis. So no, that doesn't surprise me that you would view everything as just like you talked about with X's working group that he was on. The military's view was, what kind of a threat is it, and how can we harness that technology? How can we harvest it? How can we graft onto it and use it?
Right. I mean, the chances are, and if this thing, is the explosion we're thinking it is, the chances are that they're from some other planet, who knows what the chances are. But there's also a good chance they're from other dimensions. They're from other time periods. They're from someplace else that we don't even understand.
And I think Emily should jump in on this one, but we are answering this based on the reality or the dimensions that we are most comfortable with. If you were to take somebody who's never seen flight, living in a jungle someplace, and show them all these tremendous things, they cannot, they're not using it as a unit of measure or an evaluation of what's going on around them. If you understand space flight, you have another part of it. We think of physics, propulsion, and going as fast as we possibly can as a way to get around. There is most likely other technologies out there that allows you to do what theoretical physicists are pointing towards, which is folding time and space that you can travel these incredible distances.
Right.
And then when you think about that, when you hear stuff, and Switch is not the only one that's talked about it. The hole that opens up in the sky and aircraft or some kind of spacecraft or something comes flying out of it, transforming and changing the shapes of things as you see it, perceive it going on. I mean, that's all over the Bible, and we act like, this is, this can't be. No, it's just we continue to define the world as we see it based on what we're seeing.
Right. They said someone said that it's like if someone had given, Da Vinci a garage door opener, he'd be fascinated by the plastic.
Right.
You know what I mean? The whole idea of what it does, what a garage is, and so on, would be just all beyond him.
What is this material?
What is this material?
How can I craft it?
Right. Emily, what do you think about all this?
Wow, I love that analogy. If you gave Da Vinci a garage door opener, he'd be fascinated by the plastic.
It's my own.
Right. Now, I think that kind of speaks to the whole UFO phenomenon is we don't, a lot of the things that are seen, I mean, they're unidentified. We don't know what they are. We can't put it into the context of, oh, that's a vehicle from outer space. I mean, it may be, it may not be. We just don't know. We can't tell. We don't know that technology yet.
Right. And, it's like how animals look at the world too. How they say dogs are about, on the intelligence level of a 7-year-old, they know when it's time to eat, when it's time to go for a walk, when it's time to bike and whatnot. But they look at our world in a certain way. We look at our world in a certain way. But there's things that dogs can't understand. They can't understand how an airplane flies or a train runs. And there's got to be stuff that we can't understand. We might see it, it's around us all the time, but we just don't understand it. And, maybe now we're just like, on the brink of finding out what all this kind of strange stuff is. And going back to what Steve was talking about, these hotspots, St. Louis Valley is certainly one of them, where they have UFOs, they see Bigfoot, they see flying humans, they see, airplanes disappearing and stuff like that. All these very strange things going on in one kind of concentrated area. St. Louis Valley is one, Skinwalker Ranch is the other. Steve, are there any air bases, are there any military bases around Skinwalker Ranch or the Bigelow Ranch?
I can't tell you which one it is, but that's a kind of a consistent thing. In most cases, you do find some kind of a military presence, at least in the general vicinity.
Right. Certainly, the St. Louis Valley, I think, has 5 military bases around, surrounding it. And Chris O'Brien, who came up with the definition of a hotspot, that was one of them. Was that it's usually within, honking distance of some kind of military base.
Right. You earlier, Mac, you mentioned that the 22 million and how everything dried up. Yes. But and of course, I just mentioned that the program was still going on, and the claim, but some of the mainstream news media said, well, they quit it because nothing much was going on. Well, according to George Knapp, who was privy to a lot of this stuff early, he said there were dozens of reports that they generated. Some reports were several hundred pages. He saw one that was 490 pages. You don't get 490 pages out of nothing.
From nothing. Who's telling him to hold off?
Bigelow and the board. That I can't remember his name. There was an astronaut that was a guy had been on the moon, and it was also was a congressman. But I can't think of his name, but yeah. So he was actually sitting on this board, and there were certain things he couldn't know about. There were certain things he was able to know about, but just had to keep his lips buttoned until the right time.
And now we're assuming it's the right time. There was a direct connection between this board and the stuff he was seeing with this program that was going on.
Yes, they were. And in fact, one of the really bizarre things is that some of this money Bigelow spent on rebuilding and setting up buildings that to house, get this, I forget the exact wording, but material that supposedly has come from some of these objects.
Oh.
Implication. There's a big veil of secrecy here, but
Right.
I don't know if he's talking about crashed objects or maybe with all the weird stuff going on the Skinwalker Ranch, maybe some stuff from there. But that's pretty intriguing.
I got to throw this next question to Cobra. It would be interesting. Is once again, I'm of the opinion that the U.S. government, they know UFOs exist. They might even have pieces of UFOs, but I don't think they know where they're from. I don't think they know what their origin is. But I'm going to throw it back to Cobra, and I'm just to suck all the funny out of the room. Is there any chance, Cobra, that this is just some $22 million boondoggle between Harry Reid and his buddy Bigelow to basically grease them? That stuff goes on all the time in Washington.
Okay, I'm going to suck some of the. There is no doubt in my mind that some of the money that went to Bigelow boondoggled.
Oh, nice.
His technology is interesting. He's got this pop-up space station aperture thing that he wants to do. I think he's probably doing some good work. I don't know the man. I don't know a lot of the technology associated with, but just the players that are involved with this and the amount of money that's there and the process of being the black program and no oversight and that stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
Something doesn't seem correct. But
Right.
just like a broken clock is right twice a day doesn't mean that him being attached to this or having some kind of involvement that it's wrong or it's not indicated.
That they didn't find something.
And that there's something afoot or there's something getting prepared. My
Right.
point is they do this all the time. There's nothing to see at the space shuttle, but the astronaut puts his hand over the lens.
Mm-hmm.
All the files from the JFK, we talked about JFK assassination, can be released, except for the stuff that the CIA, by name called out, does not want released.
Right. Right.
This continually goes on. Is Bigelow a herring in this or
Mhm.
not? I don't know, but I'm telling you that nothing works the way it used to, and nothing is
Mm-hmm.
bona fide fact. How
Right.
these reporters got the story, I'd love to hear the story
Right.
of how this all clicked
Right.
up.
Why-
How
why
did
now?
they get into this, and why the Times?
Why now?
My God,
Yeah.
the Times hasn't been interested in this in almost a decade.
Yep.
And all
Yeah,
of a
why
sudden,
not?
now the Times has the most breaking news that's going on.
But here's the interesting thing about that. And I know this only because I was in the journalism biz for a while and the PR biz, is that after next week, after Sunday, after Christmas, okay, the week between Christmas and New Year's is the dead zone when it comes to news stories and publicity. Everyone is on vacation. No big news stories break unless something catastrophic happens. It's hard to get press releases published and so on and so forth because everyone's basically on vacation,
On holiday.
right? So it'll be interesting why they didn't. If their plan was to kind of put it out to us drip by drip, be interesting why they didn't do it next week. Okay. Or do they want to come out with it and knowing that next week the story's, there's a good chance the story is going to go away. Just how the media handles it. And you're right. Why the New York Times, I mean, of all the newspapers to go with this, they seem the most, but they're the most believable. You know what I mean? Even though they're not a very good newspaper. If it came out in the New York Post or one of these kind of tabloidy things, people would tend not to have believed it, but for some reason, the New York Times, puts the stamp of the quality stamp on it. I think we're going to go to a break very soon. But hey, listen, Emily, I wanted to ask you. We're going to bring this up in the next segment, and we also want to talk about is where is everyone else? These two F-18 fighter pilots came out, and they gave really good descriptions and really good interviews, backed up by the video, the HUD video. But where is everyone else? We'll talk about that in the other segment. But Emily, this is not the first program that the U.S. government had put together to look into UFOs, right?
Oh, not at all.
What were the other ones?
Oh, do we have time before the break?
Sure, we got all the time in the world.
All right. Yeah. So
3 minutes.
So
3 minutes.
Okay. All right. I'll talk fast. So yes,
All
there were other programs that were started by the government, the Air Force specifically, to investigate UFO activity. The first of which being Project Sign. back in 1947, and it was fairly short-lived. Ended at the end of 1948, and it was put together. Well, it morphed into another project.
What was that?
A project of another name. But it was started to be able to investigate these sightings that, civilians, well, not just civilians, and military personnel were reporting of seeing these unidentified flying objects in the sky, or flying saucers, flying discs, what they called back then. UFO wasn't actually coined as a term, I don't think, until Project Blue Book. But basically what came out of that investigation was that it was their data was inconclusive. However, I think it was Captain Edward Ruppelt. Am I butchering his name?
Yeah. Ruppelt.
Ruppelt. Yep. He had come out and said that they had determined that the flying saucers that were being reported, they were real physical aircraft of some sort. They were not of U.S. or Soviet origin, and that they were likely extraterrestrial spacecrafts. And apparently that report got submitted to the Pentagon, and the U.S. Air Force Chief of Staff at the time shot that down, destroyed, that report.
Nice visual,
and ended the project.
Way, Emily. Nice visual.
What's that?
The Hindenburg. They named an airbase after him, and he said, "This is not the conclusion we wanted you people to come to.
Go back and
come to another conclusion."
Right,
yeah,
right.
I was in a couple of those projects.
Yep. Oh, wow. Okay.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
Oh,
when
well,
you came in with a conclusion, and you're told to go back and come back with another one.
Oh, really?
One.
I thought you meant the.
No, not this one. I'm old. I'm not that old, Emily.
Gonna say,
wow. Break, Mac.
We don't know.
I'm feeling the need.
Okay.
To,
all right. And they said I was old.
Yeah, I know. You get that right. Wow. Switchblade.
Oh, Mark, she shot that down. I didn't realize Cobra had to put on the defensive system when Emily's in the house.
1-1 has no idea what he's missing.
That's why I sounded so surprised.
You're listening to Mac Maloney's Military Exile Show here on the Distant Thunder Radio Network. We're talking about this newly released, newly revealed Pentagon project looking into UFOs, something they were telling us they weren't doing for the past 30 years. Well, they lied to us. They have been doing it. They were doing it.
Yes.
And now we're talking about it. So why don't we take a commercial break now, and we'll be right back after this. Stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone, to Mac Maloney's Military Exile Show here on the Distant Thunder Radio Network. This is Mac Maloney. Got a crowd of people here tonight, but no 1-1. Sorry, girls. I can hear you crying out there. He's on his own secret mission, but joining us is the equally famous Commander Cobra from his undisclosed location.
Good evening, gentlemen and lady.
And also joining us up there in the disclosed location of the Bowl of Flakes, Battle Creek, Michigan, Switchboard. Why do I want to call you Switchboard, Steve? What's going on? Switchblade, Steve Ward.
Maybe you could just call me Snap, Crackle, and Pop.
Oh, hang on. See, when the funny legs, you can always count on Switchblade. You doing okay up there tonight?
I'm doing really good.
Okay. All right. What's your favorite cereal again? Shredded wheat?
No, I can't stand shredded wheat. I grew up on Wheaties, but I left that behind. I'm eating some kind of stuff that my doctor recommended I should have.
Captain Crunch.
That sounds great.
Yeah, Captain Crunch. That's it. Well, that fiber and nutrition. Yeah.
Sprinkle a little sugar on your Captain Crunch and come see me again.
That's its best friend. Eating too much sugar. Anyway, classing up the show. Emily Mittermeier is with us. Emily M. joining us from Cincinnati.
Hello.
You're in Cincinnati tonight, right?
I am, yeah.
You're kind of a world traveler, aren't you, in your other job?
I do. I travel quite a bit. So it's one of my first nights in Cincinnati in quite a while.
Wow. Okay. All right. Another show. We're talking about, I'm assuming it's another show. We're talking about the secret Pentagon program looking at the UFOs that was just recently revealed last week. It came accompanied by 2 perfectly edited videos from the U.S. Navy showing F-18 pilots chasing these things. The video isn't crystal clear, but there's something out there. And what also convinces me is that, these pilots who, they just don't let anyone fly an F-18. These guys know what they're doing. They've seen a lot of strange stuff. They know when they see something, whether it's Venus or another airplane or whatever. And when they say, we didn't know what this these things were. They said there was a fleet of them coming out of the ocean, of all things. When they say we don't know what they were and that they were, breaking the laws of aerodynamics as we know them, I believe them. Because they've seen it all. So we were just going to talk, before we get into the other programs that the U.S. government used to have to look into UFOs, this idea, why now, Cobra? Why now? And is this just, the first step? Is there another shoe going to drop out there, do you think?
Yes, I think that another shoe is going to drop. I do not think it's a clean answer. I believe that it is multifaceted, that there is a certain amount of disinformation in there. There's a certain amount of normalizing or socializing what's coming next. I think that there's a spirit of destabilizing every kind of institution and foundation. I don't mean that as a bad thing. I just think that it's basically kind of a cause celeb in the last few years that we've just gone through this cycle. And there's also an insatiable appetite for the next thing that's going to fascinate us. So
the next big thing, yeah.
Yep. And I think that's part of it.
I just got to ask this, and just please give me a yes or no answer, okay? Is this happening because of the new resident in the White House?
Yes.
Wow. That is depressing. Emily, so
I actually think it's good news. So there you go.
Okay, there you go. Hang on. You know what? Just for the heck of it. Now, Emily, as we were saying before in the other segment, this is not the first time that the U.S. government has put together a program, to look at UFOs. And Project Blue Book, I know, was started after the Korean War. It ended in 1967. They said that they were looking into UFOs. Everyone used to think, or they made it appear like Project Blue Book was like this big building like NASA and people running around in white coats and everything. And it never was more than like an Air Force officer and like 2 secretaries. They didn't really look into something. It was just kind of like lip service, right?
Right. Yeah. Project Blue Book was, the staff was very small for that. And it seemed like it through its history, because Blue Book was started in between Sign and Blue Book was Project Grudge, which lasted, I think about 3 years.
Right.
And was basically used to kind of debunk any, UFO activity and basically say, oh, it can be explained by other things. It was just misinterpreted by people who saw it. But yeah, when Project Blue Book came around officially in 1952, and it was in effect or active through 1969, and they did take all the reports of sightings that had happened from people, and it sounded like through those years that it was active, that it depending on who was the director of the project, the actual investigation into these sightings varied greatly from actually really putting effort into investigating these and trying to figure out what these sightings could have been and what people saw, to not even investigating them at all. Just, being the, kind of the public face for what activity was happening. And they were trying to lessen the public's interest in UFOs at that point.
They did that. I read once that what they used to do is that, they would get all kinds of reports and people would send it to them. And what they used to do is they used to explain the ones that they could already solve, like Venus was very bright that night, and it was, and probably what the person saw was Venus. People saw, 10 lights going over the sky. Well, they found out that there were maneuvers area, Air Force maneuvers in that area, at that time, and they say, well, what you were seeing was this. They explained the ones that they already knew the answer to. The ones that were unknown, they didn't even touch. But they did say when they closed it in 1969, I believe they did say that there was about 700 cases that they could not solve. And in my opinion, it's like ghosts. If there's one real ghost sighting, then ghosts exist. If there's one real UFO sighting, then UFOs exist. So was it around 700 or so they admitted they couldn't solve?
Right. I think it was 701.
Wow.
As Emily always with that.
That's close.
Could you please be more specific?
Yes.
But yes, that's a lot that you can't explain.
So they were really just giving us.
I would have let it go if it was 700, but when you hit the 701, you got to have a standard.
Right, you have to do something. So really, when that ended in 1969, when they supposedly closed shop on it, and up until now, they said that no, there was no U.S. military program looking into UFOs. They were lying to us, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to consult a lawyer on that one. Yes. They were lying.
Okay. Just want to get it down there on, for the record. Do you think, Emily, you looked into Blue Book, you looked into Grudge. Do you think that, they just secretly carried on Blue Book? A lot of people do.
I think it's likely. Because they obviously started these projects for a reason, and they had, it's in their reports in the archives that clearly says that there are all these cases that remain, unidentified. So I would think they would be curious to find, there's something going on, and there might be technology that we want to get our hands on. So yeah, I think they did continue afterwards to continue.
You think, Kobe, you think they just, contracted it out and, ended the paper trail kind of?
No, they keep morphing it into different areas. They keep applying it. They want no one to have too much information on it. You're going to change out people. Excuse me. Plus, you have the changes in assignments. Steve, you know that. Nothing ever stays with the same person, right?
Right. And, it might just be a matter of semantics. They killed Blue Book, but you can be sure that there were always elements within the government that were, I think Blue Book, I wanted to ask Emily a little bit if she thought that Blue Book, if they were ever serious, and you kind of answered that a little bit with different directors you thought were more serious than others. But I think toward the end, it just seemed like it was a public relations thing. We've got this here to sort of a buffer between people that are really seeing things, and we'll just kind of appease them and, give an explanation.
We're taking care of it. We're taking care of it.
A lot of times you pick people that are zealots because you think they're going to be useful, good or bad, to drive that. And it's obvious that some of the energy that Blue Book created or what went on there allowed for a curtain to go up for other activities. And take that away. And the paranoia of what was going on with the Soviets. This is also the same era where we got it wrong on one of the May Day parades, because the B-6 bomber that was flying, the formation was flying, it was the same ones flying over and over again. And as they were counting it, when they saw it in the film, they said, "Oh my God, we have a bomber
hundreds
gap."
of them."
And then no one ever took the time to check the friggin' serial numbers on the sides of the airplanes, which were visible, were the same friggin' airplanes going back and forth, round and round. So
those Russians.
Like Moose, Boris and Natasha. Watch out for squirrel. Moose has got it. Unbelievable.
Yeah, right. And I just have to keep coming back to this one fact: is why now? I know I sound like a broken record, but is it just? Steve, is Bigelow, has he met the press yet? Has he talked to the press yet about this?
You know what? I don't know if he has. I know
think
that
we would have seen it. We would have seen it.
He was on 60 Minutes not too long ago. Just vehement that.
I was just going to say that, is he going to be on 60 Minutes? How long ago was that?
Well, that was some months ago. It wasn't really, it wasn't too long ago.
Right.
But he, the whoever, I forget, I don't know who was interviewing him, but there's that sort of built-in giggle factor with the mainstream media. They kept asking him, are you afraid of what people are going to say about you if they're going to laugh at you? He says, I don't give a damn. This is real. This ET presence is a real thing. It's a real physical thing.
Right.
And, another interesting thing about him, you guys were talking about paper trails and so forth. However this was funded, this $22 million and so forth, and supporting, it was actually supporting a private contractor. It was done in such a way that you can't get FOIA requests to find out what the heck.
It's a black program. That's the whole reason why this went in. And it's right for what Mac had brought up before, that this could just be a very convenient payoff to a guy who's kind of interested in this stuff and is going to do it. It doesn't mean it's not legitimate, but it's definitely. But I have to begs you the question of why there's this deep a lack of oversight, and FOIA is a huge problem.
But Cobra, my sense is that because it's Bigelow, that there may be some of that there, but I think Bigelow is dead serious about this stuff, and is a guy. Now,
I know a lot of crazy people that are dead serious about stuff too, and he does not give me the warm and fuzzy whatsoever. Starting with
he's not warm and fuzzy, and I was disappointed that originally when he took over with the NIDS team, I thought, oh, finally, here's a private entity, and we'll get answers. unlike the government, which keeps everything quiet. Well, he's keeping things quiet too. We're not, we got this Hunt for the Skinwalker book, and I think he was sorry that he ever released that, because we've got all these, the whole.
Well, that's what happens.
Well, why is he keeping it secret? Why is he?
Because he's got $22 million, and he's got the future.
Yeah, but if he's a billionaire, that's not a whole lot of money to this guy, though. From what I've understood, I mean, he's a billionaire. He's a businessman.
And if you're a billionaire and you get to keep more of it, then please, how can you think that? How come people that are billionaires don't turn altruistic on everything? Why do they?
Well, they're getting more money, is what it is. I'm sure he's getting paid. He might be getting paid from somewhere else. That's another thing. And I said earlier on the show is that, $22 million, as X said to me, he says the Air Force spends $22 million on their golf courses in this country every year. It's nothing. It's nothing to a $600 billion Pentagon budget. And who God knows what the black object, ops budget is. It's nothing yet. I saw a lot of the media say, oh, what are we wasting this on? UFO dough and all this kind of stuff. That ridicule factor is in there. I wish Peter Jennings was still around, because he did that great 3-hour show on UFOs about 2 years before he died. And that was like the first time ever I saw on mainstream media someone who looked at it and there was no giggle factor in there,
But it did take a turn toward the end. They kind of shoveled away all those great sightings, and then they went to SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, and they've got the big ditches up in the sky.
The big ears are listening.
When the aliens are landing right behind them, in the mountain. So,
interesting.
So,
I know.
They're kind of laughing at them. Hey, look they missed us.
Right.
But
so Emily, way back then, with Project Grudge and everything, they kind of started out with good intentions, right? Until they came to something that, the big shots at the Pentagon just didn't want to hear.
Right. I think they did. And what I find interesting is I was on it was the National Archives website looking at where you could go to view the declassified documents from Project Blue Book, in Washington.
Isn't that a trip to a crazy mind? The National Archives? My God.
I want to go there. I might need to make a trip. But I found it odd that on the website they refer to, anytime that they referred to the Roswell sighting incident was in quotes, like it wasn't real. And I found that so weird coming from a government website. I mean, I know they have, except for the first day, have always said it was a weather balloon. It wasn't a UFO, but
on the first day they did say it was a UFO. Then they backtracked.
Right. And then after that, they said, no, it's not. And even to this day on their website, they refer to it as an incident.
Well, the hobgoblin of consistency grinds slowly in government where it matters.
Right. Well, wow. It's, I don't know, very interesting. And, what I want to know is, and we will still, we'll talk about this on future shows, but we've talked about this before, and you said it earlier, Cobra. Where's everyone else? These two F-18 pilots, actually, I only saw one of them. He came out. He had been retired for quite a while.
Yep. No books.
Yep. No books yet. You never know.
No YouTubes.
And he just spoke so well with a lot of authority on this. I can't imagine him being part of some big plot to.
It seemed a little bit polished, though, didn't it?
It did seem polished, and he's not. It's interesting. He's not a typical looking fighter pilot, which I thought. He looks like an English professor, doesn't he? You know what I mean? Didn't have the buzz cut and the tattoos or any of that. He looked like an English professor to me, which kind of gave him more credibility with me.
Sure.
But where are the thousands of other pilots,
or at least 701, as Emily would point out?
Don't you think they're still afraid, still cautious? I mean, sure, these people have come out, but it's like if I was in that, I'd think, okay. I'm going to wait a minute. Is this going to blow over? Because the press might just come to a point and ignore it. Then it goes away, even though there's been some real substance here. And but also you've got all these other incidents, the Coyne helicopter incident that we've talked about before over Ohio, with the helicopter pilot, where they had 70s. That close encounter in the 70s, in 73, where they had where the craft seemed to actually move the helicopter, which is it was a really bizarre experience, but you had maybe 6 or 8 crew members that all saw this, and you've got dozens and dozens and dozens of credible pilots that have seen these things over the years.
All right, so Mac, how are we going to find these guys and girls?
This is my idea, okay? And we've talked about this before on the show. How about this? Why don't we call on the U.S. military right now to give blanket amnesty to any service member, past or present, who saw a UFO and was told don't talk about it. We hear a lot of stories from veterans who say, and I'll tell you, someone in my family, the exact thing happened to them. He was an Air Force mechanic. He and 3 other mechanics saw a UFO came right down on top of the plane they were fixing in the middle of the night. He says the most foolish thing I ever did was I reported it. He was locked up in a room, not beaten or brainwashed or anything, and just asked the same questions over and over, and was given a pile of paperwork to fill out until at the end of 4 days he said, okay, we give up. And they signed a statement saying that it was a reentry vehicle from Cape Canaveral. This happened in Charlestown, South Carolina. Okay, they wore them down, okay, which is a well-known technique. Right?
For all our listeners in Charleston, South Carolina, Charlestown is a town in Massachusetts.
Did I say Charlestown?
Yes,
did I say Charlestown? Oh,
I don't. I just don't want to lose anybody in South Carolina.
And one isn't here. That's where he's from. Anyway, and so what happens is, in other cases where we've heard from veterans where they said, yeah, I saw this, but my CEO came up and said, don't ever talk, about this. And I guess all pilots have top secret clearance, and they fill out non-disclosure forms and stuff like that. But what we're saying is, in this case only, not looking at top secret weapons or anything like that. In the case of what we call UFOs, why doesn't the military give blanket amnesty to everyone who is told, okay, hey, listen, don't talk about this. Let them talk now. You let the F-18 pilots talk. Let everyone else talk. I think that we will be hit with a tidal wave of new information on UFOs that will get us that much closer to figuring out what this puzzle is. Steve, what do you think of that idea?
Well, it's a great idea. I have to tell you, when I first heard this, I was totally skeptical. I thought, oh, no, here we go again. Another carrot dangling out there. But I've gotten to the point where I'm a little bit optimistic now. I'm still very, very, very cautious to think that, the other shoe is going to drop and something more is going to come out of this. But I really hope so.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're all hoping for. But see, that's the thing is next week, unless this thing really has legs, in the media, which it seems to have. I know the pilot was on CNN last night being interviewed. Right. If it survives into the first couple of weeks of the new year, then maybe we have something going here. But as Cobra said earlier, you just, these things go out there and then they just wait. If you're in any kind of a scandal or you're putting out news there that you really don't want out there, all you really have to do is wait, and then something else comes along, especially these days. One of the Kardashians falls off a cliff or something, and boom, your UFO story is, off the
Unless a UFO is what pushed off one of those Kardashians.
Well, yeah, exactly. We can only hope. No, that isn't nice.
Oh, that was hurtful.
What a scene
in this season. In this season, too.
Anyway, so, what do you think, Cobra? I mean,
all right, I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great idea. I think you got your best chance in this administration. I will get that. I'll slide that one underneath the radar. But what are we going to do? What's Mac Maloney going to do on Task Force Griffin going to do for this? What's going to happen? And I say, if somebody wants to approach us and wants to have that, they should do it. What do you think?
Yeah,
you want to bring them on?
Unless they're keeping something from us. That's the thing, is that when that guy resigned, the person who was in charge of this when he resigned, he said two things that really didn't just add together. He said there was opposition in the Pentagon to the funding, okay? And then, which we've already determined $22 million is like nothing to the Pentagon. But he also said that a lot of the stuff that they found was classified, and the military wanted to keep it classified. So to me, it's like, well, if you must have spent the money pretty well if you've got this whole boatload of classified stuff on UFOs, You see what I mean? How it didn't really kind of jive?
Oh, you're absolutely correct. But my point is, you have a pretty big forum right here for someone to contact you and give their thing and see if that loosens it up. What that brings. I think you should make yourself available, be the guy that collects that.
Okay. All right. I will do that. How do I do
Throw
it?
yourself out there, Mac. Because you haven't thrown yourself out enough in the last 20, 30 years on this subject. You've only written a few books.
Yes.
Hosted a few, shows and stuff like that.
On sale everywhere. Yes. Right. Okay. I will do that.
I've got a question, though. Okay. What happens if Mac disappears? Who's next in line? Wait a minute. Who's next in line to take the show over?
Juan, of course. Why? What are you trying? Where's Juan? Are you holding it somewhere?
Okay, what happens if somebody takes Juan too?
Now you're really talking conspiracy. Well, Cobra would come first, and Emily. They wouldn't.
Okay, I'm just checking the pecking order here. That's
okay. All right. Well, what do you want to hear? Do you want the news straight, or do you want it, candy code?
So I volunteer Switch to take my place. He can.
Really?
Okay. I'm going to do like Wingman, another one of your great series of books. I like being in that second or third on sale everywhere. I like being on that third, second and third tier. Operating comfortably in my lair.
Okay. All right. There you go. TMI there, Cobra. Emily, I think Emily should be the face of the show. I mean, look at us.
Yeah. Well, if you're going to pick a face out of what I'm looking at, yes, Emily wins hands down.
Sorry. No, if that isn't a Harvey Weinstein moment, nothing is.
Hey, don't put me in the same category with that piece of crap.
Okay. Emily, do you think this idea would work? Us calling on the Pentagon to give blanket amnesty to service people who saw UFOs and were told to shut up?
I don't know that it would work since we're talking about the government, but I love the idea. Mm-hmm. I would hope it would work.
Right. Yeah. It's almost
so many people coming out with stories.
I do like Cobra's idea about, seriously, that, a lot of people hear the show and this would be a great place for pilots to come forward and say, this is what happened.
Yeah. They can talk to you off, package a small statement. And if they can give some of the basic facts, see if anybody else reacts to it. I think it's a great forum, and it may be the trick within the whole thing here that's going to get some of the logjam to move.
Well, why don't we just give out an email address? Should we use what email address should we use there, Cope?
Well, we can always use the one that's associated with your show, Operation Distant Thunder. All one word.
Yes.
Because it's the Distant Thunder Radio Network that you put together.
Right.
Operation Distant Thunder at gmail.com.
Okay. Operation Distant Thunder at gmail.com.
One word, all lowercase. Yep.
At gmail.com. You can also do a Google on the show, which it's interesting how many hits that we get on that. Mac Maloney's Military X-Files show. But Operation Distant Thunder is pretty easy to remember. Operation Distant Thunder. Operation Distant Thunder at gmail.com. If you're a veteran and you'll have a story to share with us, please send us, your story. And but what we're doing is we're calling on the Pentagon, the military establishment, to just say, and how much would it take? And especially if you're going to do it,
well, it won't be 22 million. I can tell you that.
But sure, okay, no one's going to be punished by coming out in public and saying what they saw. UFO wise, not top secret, weapons or anything like that, top secret projects. If you thought you saw a UFO and your CO said, hey, don't ever talk about this, if you get amnesty and you can come out and talk about it, just think of the stories we'd get, Steve. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And again, we know the history. We know what's out there. But this is really the time. It would be great for them to come forward on the wave of what's going on now. And just perhaps we can build on it and get something going.
Right. Well, listen, I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. Too bad Juan wasn't here. He missed a party. Steve Reno up there on the Ball of Flags, thanks for joining us and adding your expertise.
It's my pleasure.
Okay. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Et cetera, et cetera. Okay.
Same to you. All of you.
Yes. Right. Merry Christmas
Emily,
to everyone.
Yes. Emily, thank you for joining us.
Sure. My pleasure.
Okay. And, raising the skew, as they say, of the show.
Always nice to have a little positive light.
There you go. Right. And by positive light, he means a blonde. Is that what you mean there, Cobra? Watch it.
I don't think I need to make any comment on that.
Okay, thank you. We might cut that out. Thank you for joining us, and we'll be on in a couple weeks with Juan will be back with the rest of the gang. So until then, thanks to everyone out there listening to us, and let's see where this goes. Maybe this is the breakthrough that we've been hoping for. Let's see where it goes. So you've been listening to Mac Maloney's Military X-Files show here on the Distant Thunder Radio Network. Our email is distantthunder@gmail.com, all one word.
Operation Distant Thunder.
Operation Distant Thunder. Operation Distant Thunder @gmail.com. I never write myself there. That's why I don't know the address, Operation Distant Thunder @gmail.com. Drop us a line. And until we see you next week, have a good holiday. Be safe, be happy, and bye-bye.